Oh, okay. So we can just stop fact-checking people in power, I guess, unless they're on your political side, your ideological island. That's fine. You see, being in the tank for socialists and Marxists and liberals and Democrats, who are basically fellow travelers, the news media is, they don't care anymore that they're saying the silent part out loud. They're letting you know right now, okay, that they're in the tank for the potato. They are. They've always been in the tank for Democrats and liberals and socialists, etc. They've always been. 100%. Now this guy, Glen Kessler, and the Washington Post, and he's the head fact checker, halts fact check tracker of Biden administration. Why? This is also the same guy that deep dove into Tim Scott's past, senator from South Carolina. Met the guy, he's real awesome. For not being black enough. Right. They wouldn't do that to their own side, would they? No. They only do it to They wouldn't do it to Democrats, but they're going to do it to Republicans, and especially black Republicans, who dare stray away from the ideological plantation. Can't have that. Can't have them getting off. But, again, they're just saying the silent part out loud. You all know this if you've been listening to my content and others. You know that the news media is in the tank for the potato administration. Kessler recently fact-checked South Carolina Senator Tim Scott for basically not being black enough, digging into his ancestry and family history of enslavement. Kessler said outright that he wouldn't be fact-checking Biden as hard or as rigorously as he had fact-checked Trump, who spread his own disinformation about Georgia voting laws, who said Trump was president during a time when Biden had already been in the Oval Office. Kessler defended the abandonment of this cause on Twitter. He compared the two endeavors of fact-checking each president, noting that, by his account, Biden's errors or false or misleading claims were substantially less than Trump's, saying that he had learned his lesson. Oh, okay. So we can just stop fact-checking people in power, I guess, unless they're on your political side, your ideological island. That's fine. But you went out of your way to fact-check President Trump, falsely at times. But, again, this is all part of the plan, apparently, for Glen Kessler, a piece of human trash. By that he means who knows what the next 4 years will bring. But in his database of fact checks against the potato, Kessler writes that more typical for Biden when he uttered a false statement was some subtle truth stretching. Wait a minute. If you stretch the truth, dare I say that is in fact in the ballpark of lying. But if it's a lie, it's a lie. If it's not, it's not. But to Glen Kessler, he doesn't care. You see, Biden, the potato, is in his ideological mind. He believes the same things the potato believes. He doesn't care. So if the potato lies, and he does constantly, or matter of fact, a lot of things sometimes he doesn't know what he's saying. So if he's lying, it's just out of practice. It's out of human nature that the potato lies to all of us. But don't let Glen Kessler, stop you from, researching this, because even though that he's not going to fact check as hard anymore, let you all know all you need to know about the news media in this country, that they're in the tank, have always been in the tank for goddamn filthy fucking goddamn Democrats. 100% across the board. Kessler spent 4 years slamming the President Trump and his administration, changing the definition of fact-checking to include things like context and bias analysis. Right. You see, to a Democrat and a liberal piece of human trash like Glen Kessler is, and the potato, don't worry about the context. Don't worry about bias analysis. There is no bias in the news media, the fourth estate, and in the government, especially if it's run by filthy fucking Democrats. No. There's no bias there. We believe what they believe, so there's no reason to needle in. So let's have a look at some of those fact checks against Trump. Trump spoke about Abraham Accords, which reduced tensions in the Middle East so substantially that he was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. And air travel began between Israel and the UAE. This momentous achievement, Trump said, the Abraham Accords opened the doors to a future of peace and harmony, not violence and bloodshed. Yeah, it did. But, of course, Kessler had to come in, with his bullshit and say, said that it was misleading because unlike Jordan and Egypt, the Arab and North African nations extending diplomatic recognition to Israel during his presidency have never been at war with the Jewish state. Hello? They may have not technically been at war, but they've been, those North African nations and other nations in Africa that have a Muslim majority have been giving tacit support to those nations. But that's not misleading at all. He went on to say that the main conflict between Palestinians and Israel was ignored by Trump. However, the pressure that surrounding the Arab nations' normalization of Israel relations put on Palestine was at least half the point of the accords in the first place. Kessler marked as false Trump's statement that Biden would ban fracking. True. And it said that Trump repeated his claim 141 times. After entering office, Biden signed an executive order that amounted to banning fracking. Politico writing a fact check in response to all the outlets that said the potato banned fracking said that Biden's climate change plan never called for banning fracking. Instead, it proposed banning new fracking on federal lands. That's just a funny way of mental gymnastics I've ever seen it. The quibble isn't that Biden hasn't said all fracking stops now, put your drills down and walk away. The potato said once you're done fracking under his contract, or this contract, there will be no new contract. Trump was essentially right. Biden was banning fracking while being legally obligated to uphold federal contracts. Kessler said that Trump's claim that the U.S. had started building a border wall was false, and that he said this 258 times. Kessler rated this false because instead the money was restricted to fencing, and it was generally used for replacement fencing with relatively few miles built where no barrier had been before. Yes, because the Border Patrol actually asked, they didn't want a wall because you can't see through the wall who's on the other side. They wanted fencing, different types of fencing, and fixing the fencing that was either, obsolete or torn down. He says, upon taking office, Biden reversed Trump's border wall plans, leaving equipment and materials littering the construction areas. And migrants entering the country made through those unfinished areas of the border wall. And since then, the administration has said that they'll reconsider filling in gaps on the border wall that apparently doesn't exist because, according to Glen Kessler, the U.S. never started building it because it was a fence, not a wall. Wall, fence, potato, potato. Potato. The full list of Kessler's fact-checking stretches can be found here. And for sure, there are some legitimate claims. Politicians lie, and the statement needs no partisan fact-checker to prove that. Which is probably a good thing because Kessler and his fact-checking operation are going to take a breather. Kessler said while fact-checks would continue, the database of Biden's lies, truth stretches, and falsehoods would not. And a perusal of the database on the first 100 days shows that many of Biden's errors had been attributed to flubs, or mental decline, if you will. He writes a number of Biden's statements were flubs. For instance, he said Hispanics were the fastest growing immigrant population when their rate of growth has been overtaken by that of Asian Americans in the past decade. Without being too biased, I think it's fair to say that Trump would not have been given the benefit of the doubt on something like that. I don't need to continue on. This guy's a piece of human shit. All news media, and I guess you could say, well, you're being biased because you think all news media is far left and you would support, the right wing. Yeah, I do. Because there again, they sort of align with my ideology. And I hear that. But if you're part of the fourth estate, at least you're supposed to act the way a journalist would in the past, bringing truth to power. But Glen Kessler doesn't do that. He's more of a stooge, if you will, for the potato administration. This just goes to show you that where we're at now is that you can't expect the news media to actually report what's going on in the potato administration. They're not going to fact check, apparently. They're not going to deep dive on them. They're not going to investigate them. Why? Because they believe exactly what the potato believes. They don't care. They're going to push whatever that goddamn filthy fucking potato puts out. They don't care about you. They care about ideology. They care about money, and they care about reducing your liberties and making sure that their boot is on your neck. Believe me, you think that Glen Kessler out there, if the government would bust down your door and arrest you for ideological wrong speak, you think this guy would be there to report on it? No, he would actually be reporting on the benefit of kicking in your door and removing people from society that don't think like Glen fucking Kessler. Glen Kessler, you're a piece of fucking shit.